Okay, hello everyone. Just about ready to start. A few people checking in. Less than a minute to go till 6. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. So today I'm going to go over the Cakkavatti-Sīhanāda Sutta. That's number 26 in the Digha Nikaya. Last week we did the Aganya Sutta, which is number 27, and deals with origins. And the story took us up to, went through the descent of the Abhisara beings onto Earth and their devolution into human beings. And the story ended with the establishment of human society, kingship, and the caste system. So even though this sutta, in the numerical order of the Digha, it comes before the other one, it's really a continuation. It's really should, in logical sequence, it should come after, because it mostly deals with the mythological future, whereas the Aganya deals with the mythological past. And this sutta, the Buddha begins in the deep past, talking about a sequence of wheel-turning monarchs, Cakkavатtis. The wheel-turning monarch is an important concept in mythological history of the world, and it's kind of the flip side of kingship. As we saw in the Aganya Sutta, we saw the negative side of kingship as being a political establishment made necessary by the depravity of human beings to keep order. So it's sort of a necessary evil. But in the wheel-turning monarch, we have the ideal of perfect kingship. At various times, a wheel-turning emperor will arise who conquers the whole world without stick or sword by the power of the wheel. This is an 8-spoked wheel that appears in the sky and hovers over his palace and signifies that he is to be a wheel-turning monarch. And he will then, together with his army and his ministers, float through the air, following under the power of the wheel. They all fly through the air to the different kingdoms and continents of the earth and receive the subjection of other monarchs, and establishes a universal monarchy that's ruled according to Dhamma, ruled justly and fairly. There's certainly very many kind of fabulous or magical elements to this kingship. He gets around the problem of funding his administration without taxes. By the power of the wheel, they scoop up jewels from the bottom of the ocean, and that's their finances. So this particular, and there's more than one wheel-turning monarch in the mythology. He's also a wheel-turning monarch is also considered a Mahapurisa, great man, and someone born with the 32 marks of a Mahaparisa will become either a Buddha or a wheel-turning monarch. And this is the case of Gautama Buddha, that the soothsayers predicted that of him. And this is kind of the crux of the story of his early life, where his father wanted him to become a great emperor, so he shielded him from seeing the horrors of birth, sickness, old age, and death, hoping he would not turn to the spiritual path. So when we get to this, there's a bit of a preliminary section, but then when we get to the section of this sutta that deals with the history, it tells the story of the wheel-turning monarch named Dalhanemi, who ruled a long time ago. A righteous monarch of the law, conqueror of the four quarters, who had established the security of his realm and was possessed of the seven treasures. And these seven treasures are archetypal for all wheel-turning monarchs, have the seven treasures: the wheel treasure, the elephant treasure, the horse treasure, the jewel treasure, the woman treasure, the householder treasure, and the counselor treasure. The a householder treasure should really maybe be the finance treasure, or the money man. He's the one who finds finances to run the kingdom. The wheel is the critical one. The woman treasure is his chief queen, who's the most beautiful woman imaginable. And one of the statements in the commentary is that she has the characteristic that in the hot season her limbs are cool to the touch, and in the cold season they're warm to the touch. And the elephant and horse treasure are beasts that the king rides, and they both fly. They both fly through the air. He has more than 1,000 sons who are heroes of heroic stature, conquerors of the hostile army. Having 1,000 sons is obviously a very large number, but it's not actually impossible, because all of these ancient Indian kings had many wives, and you can expect a wheel turner would probably have hundreds of wives. He dwells, having conquered the sea-girt land without stick or sword. So far, his career follows the ordinary course of a wheel turner. And then it says, after many hundreds and thousands of years, King Dalhanemi said to a certain man, whenever you see the wheel treasure slipped from its position, report it to me. We'll get into this a bit more later in the sutta, but the lifespan of human beings at that time was very long. There's a cycle of human lifespans from 80,000 years down to 10 years and up again, that repeats throughout the duration of the world system. So this occurred very early, when the lifespan was in tens of thousands of years. And when the wheel treasure slips from its position in the sky, that means it's a sign that the king's authority or sovereignty is waning, and his time has come to renounce the kingship, and he goes forth as a mendicant, as a samana into the forest, and practices meditation and seclusion. So he called in his son to take over, and he told his son, I have had my fill of human pleasure. Now is the time to seek heavenly pleasure. You, son, take over control of this land. I will shave off my hair and beard and go forth from homeless life into homelessness. So now the son takes over, and the son is in this text is not named, but he's the son of Dalhanemi, and he becomes a new king, but the wheel disappears. So he asks his counselors, have I lost my authority? And they told him that the wheel is not an heirloom to be passed from father to son. You have to earn the right to be a wheel turner. Well, what do I have to do? And they tell him what the duties of an Orion wheel turning monarch are. He has to depend on the Dhamma, honor it, revere it, cherish it, do it homage, and venerate it, having the Dhamma as your badge and banner, acknowledging the Dhamma as your master. You should establish guard, ward, and protection according to Dhamma for your own household, your troops, your nobles and vassals, for Brahmins and householders, towns and country folk, ascetics and Brahmins, for beasts and birds. Let no crime prevail in your kingdom, and to those who are in need give property. And whatever ascetics and Brahmins in your kingdom have renounced the life of sensual infatuation and are devoted to forbearance, each one taming himself, from time to time you should go to them and consult with them as to what is wholesome and what is unwholesome, etc. So this son then follows this advice and rules according to Dhamma, and the wheel reappears. And this continues exactly repeated for 7 generations. Each time the wheel begins to slip from the sky, the king abdicates and goes into the forest, and then his son takes over, rules according to Dhamma, and maintains the authority of the wheel. It ends with the 7th monarch, when he's told the duties of a wheel turning monarch. He neglects the one duty of providing property to the needy, and as a result of that, some people in the kingdom, due to poverty and hunger, take to thievery. And when they're brought before the king, he says, well, why did you resort to thievery? And they say, well, we have nothing to eat. So he orders them to be given some money and sent on their way. And this turned out to be a foolish practice, because when the word got out in the kingdom, you get free money from the king if you're caught stealing. Then people started stealing more. So then the king flipped the other way and says, well, this is getting out of hand. We're going to have to deal with this. Next one who comes to me will chop his head off. And so he chops the thief's head off, and then this alarms everybody else, and they start taking up swords to protect themselves, and they start robbing now with violently with swords, and there's killing and destruction brought in the land. So this is the end of the cycle of wheel turning monarchs, and it's the beginning of a sequence of degeneration. Now, I alluded to it before that there is a cycle spoken of in terms of human lifespan, which is tied to human morality. That human beings cycle back and forth between a lifespan of 80,000 years down to a lifespan of 10 years. And there's a sequence given that the lifespan during this, the major part of this decline, the decline goes generation by generation. Each generation has a lifespan half as long as the previous generation. And each one takes up some specific vice or depravity that causes the decline in morality, causes a loss of lifespan. So the first stage is violence. When people start taking up swords and fighting, then the lifespan falls from 80,000 to 40,000 years. Then what happens in the next generation is speaking lies, untruth. And this is specifically spoken of in this sutta as when one of these thieves is brought before the king, and the king says, "Did you steal? Did you engage in armed robbery?" And he said, "No, I didn't." Then speaking evil of another, slander, that in the next generation, and the lifespan declines to 10,000 years. Then adultery, sleeping with others' wives, that brings it down to 5,000 years. Then harsh speech and idle chatter brings the lifespan down to 200 years, or sorry, 2,000 years. And then covetousness and hatred brings the lifespan down to 1,000 years. Wrong views brings it down to 500 years. Then the next one is mostly deals with a sexual immorality. And the Pali is somewhat obscure, but the commentary has explanations. The three vices that are taken up are Adama Raga, Wisama Loba, and Miccha Dhamma. And Wisama Loba is clear. It means immoderate greed, for seeking for material objects. Adama Raga is passion or desire, and Adama is like wrong or not according to Dhamma. And the commentary defines it as incest. And Miccha Dhamma, the last one, Miccha Dhamma would literally mean something like wrong ways. So it's very vague in the in the direct Pali, but the commentary says it refers to homosexuality, men lying with men and women with women. And that these three vices bring the lifespan down to 200 years. And then the final one in the series is lack of respect for the elders. That brings the lifespan down to 100 years, which is where humanity was said to be at the time of the Buddha, of our Buddha, Gautama Buddha. That was he was born at the time when the lifespan was said to be 100 years, and so it's been declining ever since. And the bottom end of the cycle is when lifespan declines to 10 years. And at that time, beings will, that has not yet transpired, it will come to be that beings will live basically like animals. They have no more morality whatsoever, and they'll kill each other randomly, savagely. And the very nadir, the very bottom, is when there's 10-day period called the sword time, when there's just a massive slaughter, people just killing each other and going mad. But there'll be a few survivors who hide in the forest or in other hidden places and don't want to take part in the violence. And they come out after the slaughter, there's very few of them left, and they see each other and they rejoice. They're still human beings alive. And they agree, we should start practicing morality and things will get better. The first thing we'll do is no killing. We won't kill anymore. So they agree to that, and the lifespan, the next generation, because of their taking up that morality, the lifespan doubles. It keeps doubling as people become more moral and more upright and follow more precepts, until we get to the future, when the lifespan increases again to 80,000 years. And this is really now in many ways, this is the most interesting part of the sutta, dealing with the future. I'll read that bit of the text here. Among the people with an 80,000-year lifespan, girls will become marriageable at 500 years, and such people will know know only three kinds of disease: greed, fasting, and old age. And in the time of those people, this continent of Jambudipa will be powerful and prosperous, and villages, towns, and cities will be but a cock's flight one from the next. Okay, there's a couple of places in here where the Pali is obscure, and I'm reading Morris Walsh's translation. Um, when it says a cock's flight from one building to from one uh, village to the next, it's really a guess from the obscure Pali, which but the intention is to mean that the um, the human habitations will be very close and crowded. The population will be very high, and people will be living in very dense numbers. And then Jambudipa will be thick with people as the jungle is thick with reeds and rushes. At that time, Varanasi, that is Benares, of today will be a royal city called Cakkavatti, powerful and prosperous, crowded with people and well supplied. In Jambudipa, there will be 84,000 cities, headed by Cakkavatti as the capital royal. At that time, when people have a lifespan of 80,000 years, there will arise in the capital city a king called Sanka, a wheel-turning monarch. So again, now we have a return of the wheel-turning monarch at this 80,000-year lifespan peak of human existence. So this is seen as a kind of a golden age to come. And also at the same time will arise the future Buddha, Maitreya. Some of you may be more familiar with his Sanskrit name of Maitreya, but Maitreya is the Pali name. He's the fifth Buddha in this world system. This world system is classed as a fortunate cycle, a fortunate kappa, in that we will have multiple Buddhas, and we will have altogether five. Gautama Buddha, the Buddha of our epoch, is the fourth. There were three preceding him, and there will be one to come, Maitreya Buddha. And he will teach the Dhamma. And King Sanka in the wheel turner King Sanka in the end will follow the tradition of all the wheel turners and events of the Buddha Maitreya. So this is the prediction of the future, and the way we fit currently into the cycle is that we're near the bottom end of one of these cycles, and then after that things will start going uphill again, and lifespans will increase and morality will increase. There's another detail to put in here from the commentary that's kind of interesting. Like these cycles will repeat the lifespan up and down. They will repeat 20 times in the course of the history of the world. And the bottom end can occur in one of three ways. In our cycle, it's sword time, when it's by fighting and violence. It can also occur by famine or by plague. It's said when it occurs by swords, it's because the predominant defilement of beings near the end is hatred, ill will, or anger. And most of the beings who die at that time will be reborn in hell because of all the violence that they committed. If greed is the predominant defilement, then it ends with a famine, and most of the beings who die at that time from starvation will be reborn as hungry ghosts because of their clinging to material things. But if it ends by a plague, This occurs when the prominent defilement is delusion, and the beings who die at the end by this massive plague will be reborn in heaven, because they have towards the end they have compassion for each other as they sicken. So this sutta deals with the uh, cycles of humanity, and it ties the fortunes of humanity and the lifespan and wisdom and beauty of beings to very directly to morality. The better morality that is kept, the more prosperous, the longer lived, the more beautiful and powerful the human beings are. And we cycled up and down from 80,000 years when we live much like Dewas down to a very bottom animal-like existence of 10 years. So that's the Cakkavatti Sutta. I'll stop there and look at what the questions have to say. Let's see. I recall the Buddha saying more go down than up with regard to rebirth. One of the more disturbing teachings during the reign of a Cakkavatti would more go up than down thanks to the just rule. Yeah, I think that what you're referring to is a general principle that's laid out in a series of short suttas in the Samyutta, that the higher realms are always less populated because it's easier to be reborn down. It's easier to fail in and fall into bad behavior and wrong views and so on, and be reborn lower than you started. But it takes effort, to and diligence to improve your rebirth position. Things would be better under a Dhamma wheel-turning monarch, Cakkavatti, and they're much better when a Buddha is present in the world, or in that first period of a Buddha epic. Then more reborn in the Dewa realm. This is stated by Saka in more than one place, that he's happy with the results of Buddhism in the Buddha Sasana in the world, because more beings are reborn into his heaven world, and they're outnumbering the asuras. Why is fasting one of the 3 diseases? Yeah, I think what that really means is hunger. I don't think it means deliberately fasting. I think it means being without food. Couldn't the time with minimum lifespan have been the Middle Ages? No, I don't. I don't think so. I don't really see it mapping in that way. It's an interesting thought. I wouldn't, but I don't find that it maps well to that, because there wasn't really a sword time. It didn't bottom out so thoroughly. This may be a naive question, but is the object, the wheel described in the Sutta, to be taken as merely allegoric? Well, you can read it in a number of different ways. It certainly is. It certainly has an allegorical element of the wheel representing the eightfold spoked wheel represents the eightfold path, represents the Dhamma, the symbol of the Dhamma. Other people have interpreted it as being some actual celestial object, or even an extraterrestrial object. There is a very interesting long passage in one of it's in the sub-commentary, actually, the Tika, that I've translated in my book, that is a detailed description of the wheel. And it does end up sounding very, very mechanical, as like an artifact. Next one. I wonder if the precept the survivors take also depends on how they were wiped out, such as after famine, not taking what is not given, after disease, not lying. That's an interesting thought. It's not clarified. That point is not clarified in the texts that I know of. It would make sense. Uh, it would make sense that the human beings' minds would work that way. Like, how did we get into such a miserable condition? Is that 20 times in an eon, Ajahn, cosmos contracting and expanding? Yes, it's 20 times in a Mahakappa, which is like the history of the whole world system from beginning to end. Um, while this world is in existence from the beginning to end, there should be 20 of these cycles. I would really like to experience jhana. Could you explain jhana? Well, not here and now. That would take too long, and it's off topic. But you can look on if you want to hear my explanation of talks and explanations about jhana. Look on the Arrow River website and the Dhamma Talk library. I did a number of talks on jhana. I also wonder why Devas and Asuras are so interested in humans, because it would be in their interest to try and influence human morality in their favor. Yeah, they do somewhat. They don't intervene or interfere in human affairs all that much, but there are stories of Saka um, making sort of key interventions, and they're not actually not always skillful or for the best. Because sometimes he's afraid that someone else is going to practice such austerities that they'll become the new Saka and basically replace him. So he tries to throw them off their practice. Is there a way to tell which way we're headed currently? Up to 80,000 or down to 10? Well, the tradition is quite clear that we're on the down cycle, and um, it's said that the way the commentaries and the tradition have always figured it out is that the Buddhist time lifespan was 100 years, and that we've been declining from that, and it's a decline. Since there's no mention of homosexuality in the canon, what is your opinion on the commentary on the sutta regarding homosexuality? Yeah, in the Sutta Pitaka, there's actually no mention of homosexuality at all. It is mentioned in the Vinaya Pitaka as a part of around the rules about sexuality. Um, the commentary identifies Miccha Dhamma as homosexuality. It could be, we can speculate about why that's so. It could be that there was a change in an evolution or a shift in social mores in between the time of the Buddha and the time of the commentaries. And homosexuality became more frowned upon. Is social media precipitating our descent towards the bottom? How long before we hit bottom? Yeah, I would think social media would definitely be increasing all sorts of defilements, particularly delusion. There's no real way of knowing when we hit bottom. I think we could try and kind of guesstimate that if we take it that the Buddha's lifespan, the lifespan at the time of the Buddha was 100, and the lifespan now is what, like 75, then we're a quarter of the way down, so it's still a few thousand years yet. But I mean, that's a very odd, very unreliable calculation. I wonder how Jesus could be seen in Theravada. since in Mahayana he can be classified as a bodhisattva or a Buddha. Could he be an arahant in Theravada? Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question. Uh, First of all, I'd say it's definitely not an arahant because of uh, two incidents in the Gospels where he demonstrated anger, which would not be appropriate not be possible for an arahant. One was with the money changers in the temple, and the other was when he blasted the fig tree. It's possible he could be a bodhisattva. He could be a Buddha in the future. And I've actually thought that, like, the life of Jesus could be a future Jataka tale. Regarding homosexuality question, I read some scholars who interpret pandaka to mean a homosexual. Can you comment? A pandaka is a class of persons that are listed in the, there are different kinds of pandakas. They're listed in the Vinaya Pitaka. It doesn't occur in the Sutta Pitaka at all. It's a men with some sexual strangeness that you're not supposed to ordain them. They're disqualified. And I think mostly it would be what we would call transsexuals today. Mm-hmm. There are different classes of pandakas, and it's somewhat some of the descriptions are a bit obscure, so it's a little hard to know exactly, but it's definitely meant to be men with some kind of sexual oddity. Is nuclear empowerment by humans a consideration to possible stepping down possibilities? Well, it certainly opens up a possibility for more mass destruction. I've heard the Pandaka argument, and it's from a Vinaya commentary from the 8th century. The commentary says you're going to ordain men of sexual relations with other men. That's what I've heard. Yeah, I think the straightforward reading of the sections in the Vinaya about Pandakas is that just having been homosexual or had homosexual relations is not a disqualification. Of course, once someone's ordained, there shouldn't have any sexual relations. That's quite clear. But if someone has well, one of the classes of pandakas that's quite unambiguous is a eunuch. If a man without testicles, whether he's lost them accidentally or deliberately, is not possible to be ordained. So it seems to be something more than just simple homosexuality. What is happiness from the perspective of a fully enlightened monk? I would say nibbana. You cannot be a follower of a Near East religion and a Buddhist at the same time, in my opinion. If Jesus ever really existed, yeah, well, that wouldn't. That's true, but that wouldn't disqualify him from being a bodhisattva and becoming a Buddha in the future. And even if we want to say that Jesus had false view in that lifetime, he was also a very spiritually powerful individual. So it was quite possible he could become a Buddha in the future. Does sada ever become effortless? Do arahants ever get distracted? Yeah, I would say that they're kind of speculating about the nature of an arahant, but I would say arahants, are always mindful and not distracted. What is your opinion on Buddhas before Gautama? Is there historical evidence for them? There isn't really any clear historical evidence. Some people have wanted to point to Mohenjo-Daro civilization, in the Indus Valley, which was roughly contemporaneous with Sumer, that there are some images that look like the cross-legged figure sitting. That's possible. I wouldn't write that off as an impossibility. It's also quite likely that there were previous civilizations very long ago that are mainstream or traditional history has written off or forgotten, like the Atlantis stories. So I think there was, quite possible that it's literally true that there were 3 Buddhas before Gautama. I've always imagined since many Buddhas exist simultaneously in different world systems, they must know each other. Yeah, possibly. Is it true that Ajahn Anand said the Mahayana Bodhisattvas exist? I don't know. I don't know what he said about that. I could see it possibly. Many of the Thai Ajahns are a bit free, free thinkers. They're not so bound to scriptural literalism, so they'd be more open to ideas like that. Okay, so I think I'll cut it off now. Thank you, and we'll come back next week. We'll do another sutta. I thought I did have one request to do the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, and that would be a good one, but I think it's so long we'll probably have to split it over a couple of talks. Okay, thank you, and see you next week.